All right, ladies and gentlemen, or lady and gentlemen, maybe tonight. Thank you all for coming. This is the deliberative session of the Peterborough Town Meeting, fiscal year 2025. As I said, thank you for being here tonight. You are our loyalists, and hope you've all registered, because you will need to register in order to be able to speak tonight and to vote on any of the amendments that are presented. I know many of you here have been to many town meetings previously, but it's always a good idea to review the procedures that we'll be following tonight. So, let's start first, though, by standing and saying our Pledge of Allegiance, which we always begin with. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Okay, so the rules are really pretty simple. I'd like to have you all speak to the chair here rather than to each other. If you want to have a private conversation, please step outside to do that. What we'll do on each of the articles that we take up tonight is to ask for we'll first read the article as it was warned and put up as the notice of the meeting. We'll ask for a motion under the article to be introduced. We'll ask for someone else to second the motion. We'll give the person making the motion the first opportunity to speak. And then we'll open the floor to any comments or questions that you may have. We'll ask everyone to get the opportunity to speak once before anyone speaks again. And we will, I think, be able to control the debate fairly easily this evening. If you'd like to speak, just queue up behind the microphone there. And when you get up to the front, please identify yourself clearly for us, because we do keep track of who's here and who's speaking. If there is an amendment offered under a motion, that needs to be in writing. We do have forms here that you can write out your amendment on, and you'll need to indicate not only what you'd like to amend, but indicate your name as well. We'll take up one amendment at a time. We'll handle those the same way as a regular motion. The person making the amendment, offering the amendment, will move what they've written. We'll ask for a second to that motion. We'll give that person who made the motion the opportunity to speak first, and then we'll ask for any other comments or questions. Once we've finished debate on an amendment, we'll vote on it. If it passes, the original motion will be amended as the amendment requested. If it doesn't pass, we'll go back to the original motion, have any further debate that we need on that, and then if we're finished with debate on a particular motion under an article, we will move that to the ballot voting that will take place on May the 14th. And we'll go on to the next article. We've got quite a number of them tonight, so please keep your remarks succinct as you can, and if somebody has already made your point, I don't think you'll need to make it again, but you're certainly welcome to speak. We want everybody to have an opportunity to speak. All right, there is a procedure known as calling the question. That cuts off debate if it passes. I'm not going to recognize a motion to call the question until everybody has had an opportunity to speak once. But once everyone has spoken, if someone makes a motion to call the question, that needs to be seconded as well. There's no debate on that motion. It will either pass by 2/3, and we'll count your hands as you vote on that, or if it does not pass by 2/3, the debate will continue. If it does pass, that will be the end of discussion about that article, and we'll move on to the next one. We won't reconsider any of the articles that we've already taken up. People sometimes come or are only able to stay for a certain number of articles, and we're not going to consider amendments or make any changes in what we've done to a preceding article once we've passed on to the next one. We also have a thing we call the civility protocol. I usually refer to that as the Peterson principle. Our longtime moderator, Walter Peterson, conducted our debates in a highly civil manner, and we're going to do the same in honor of him. We've never had a problem with that in the past, and I don't expect one this evening. So, does anyone have any questions before we get started? All right, seeing none, I'll ask Tyler Ward, the chair of the Select Board, to welcome you and give you a few preliminary comments.
Thanks, Phil. Evening, everyone. Thanks for coming out on this dreary Tuesday, chilly evening. Tonight, we have Bill Taylor with us and Bill Kennedy, fellow Select Board members, Nicole McStay, our town administrator, Town Clerk Linda Guyetts to my left over here, your right, our supervisors of the checklist, Carol Lennox, Kathy Sullivan, and Denise Sweeter over there. If you haven't checked in, check with them. If you have, thank you. Tonight we're being filmed and our sound is being recorded thanks to Tim Brezovic and Cooper Leaf, respectively. We were also joined by our Budget Committee Chair Rick Lesser. We have Donnie Parkhurst, Mandy Sliver, Leslie Lewis, Carl Mabzino, Al Lennis, and Mary Clark with us over there. Most of you know each other out there. Many of our department heads and leaders in the town are in the audience. Tonight's agenda, before that, make note if you haven't already, for quite some time now, the Conservation Commission and IT department have been working on the maps that you see in the back on our natural resources in town, and there are a lot of interesting information on them. Take the time afterwards, or if we have a break or whatever. We have, as Phil mentioned, we have several articles, about 14 of them. They include the budget and some capital reserve funds and that sort of thing. We'll get through those tonight, and then we'll vote on them on May 14th. That's Tuesday at the Community Center from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And then on Wednesday, May 15th, we'll get back here tonight to this space, and we'll discuss the fire station bond. We will not be discussing that this evening, perhaps in passing or during the budget article number 3 discussion, but we will not be discussing that in depth. And with that, again, thanks for joining us. I think we're ready to go.
All right, I think we're ready to go. So let's start with Article 3 this evening. That's the budget for fiscal year 2025. It's to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $17,589,895 for the support of general municipal water and wastewater operations. This represents the fiscal year 2025 budget period, July 1, 2024 to June 30, 2025. This article does not include appropriations in special or individual articles addressed separately. Is there a motion under Article 3?
So moved.
So moved by Tyler Ward. Second?
I will second.
By Bill Kennedy. All right. Tyler, would you like to speak first?
Sure. The budget's always our big dance. We spend months on this. Department heads work diligently to really round down their numbers and get things in order. Town Administrator McStay will elaborate on this as she's been our leader throughout this. along with our budget committee. So thanks.
Thank you, everyone. Oh, are we on? Working now? You heard? Okay. Thank you, everyone who did come out tonight. I know this is not the most exciting session at town meeting, and I really appreciate that you came out to support us in the work that we've done. So before I get into some of the highlights of the budget, let's talk a little bit about the process that got us here. Beginning in September of last year, town staff began the process of creating the draft fiscal year 2025 budget. Staff was advised to propose reasonable budgets that sought to fund the services the town currently provides as they are being provided through this year's budget. In fall of 23, staff met with the Capital Improvements Committee. They developed a forward-looking capital improvement plan that avoided debt service and leases. In November of 23, staff began meeting with the Select Board to review the economic conditions, and that's where we set the basis of the FY25 budget. We looked at the costs of electricity, diesel, gasoline, heating fuel, propane, and wood pellets. We looked at our rolling average of our usage of all of those fuels, and not only the current level of cost, but what we expected those energy costs to do in the next 18 months or so. A little bit of a cloudy ball, magic ball that we were looking into, but did the best that we could. We looked also at health insurance, pensions, property and liability insurance, workers' compensation, and other costs. We also reviewed COLA and merit recommendations, which were based on the Northeast Consumer Price Index and the 2024 Social Security COLA increases. Beginning in December of 23, we presented a complete draft of the total budget to the Select Board and Budget Committee and posted it on the website. Beginning in January of 24, town staff presented their proposed budgets to the Select Board and the Budget Committee at joint meetings. And in March of 24, the Select Board and the Budget Committee held a public hearing on the budget and voted to recommend the appropriations to the voters. So before we get too much further into the budget, just take a quick review of what the budget is made up of. The proposed budget is made of multiple budgets that are managed within 4 different types of funds, each with different funding sources. The general fund is funded by fees and taxation and is voted on at town meeting. That's the bulk of the warrant article that we're talking about. It includes the following departments and services that you see on the slide there. I'm not going to go into all of them except to say that the ambulance service has been moved into the general fund budget this year, and I'll be talking a little bit more about that as we go on. The water and wastewater budgets are enterprise funds. They're 100% funded by user fees, but they're included with the general fund when we go to vote, which is why the article that we're looking at is a $17 million article. It includes not just the general fund, but also the full cost of the water and the wastewater services. The recreation budget is also partially supported by a revolving fund. It is 100% funded by user fees, and that includes the community center. That budget is presented with the total budget for review by the Select Board and the Budget Committee, but it's not voted on at town meeting. The PEG Station revolving fund is the same thing. It is 100% supported by Comcast franchise fees, and while it's presented with the total budget, it is not voted on separately at town meeting. However, the pay-as-you-throw special revenue fund, which is also supported by fees, is voted on in a separate warrant article at town meeting. So getting into the general fund a bit, these are the cost drivers in the total proposed budget. The health insurance we're looking at for the next fiscal year has gone up 5.5%. Workers' compensation is up 15.9%. For heating fuels, what we use the actual, as I said, rolling average usage amounts for each of those different fuel sources, and then multiplied that by the current rate. That current rate is as of November of 2024, or 23, sorry. We do the same for diesel and gasoline. Our debt service has increased by $112,000. That's due to the new debt that we added on last year at town meeting for the highway garage refurbishment and the fire station design. For cost of living, we use 2% for COLA and 2% for merit. 2% for COLA is applied to all employees beginning in October, and the merit is distributed based on performance of all the employees after a review. Those are based on the Northeast CPI from September of 23, which was 3%, and the Social Security cost of living adjustment, which was 3.2%. We also looked at local towns and their average adjustments, which all worked out to be about 4.6%. Some put more of theirs into COLA, which averaged around 3.1%. Others leaned a little heavier towards merit, which averaged around 2.5%. That's why those don't add up exactly. Each town does it a little bit differently. Now, the big change in the budget was moving the ambulance service into the operating budget. We did this for a few reasons. The transfer program, which started as a pilot program in 2011, was always secondary to our emergency response service. But the revenues from that transfer program subsidized the cost of the ambulance operations. We were able to operate the transfer program with excess capacity and our staffing. However, since 2020, we've had difficulties maintaining staffing. A lot of these difficulties were due to the fact that many people just unfortunately burned out, and they moved on from being EMTs and paramedics and went to other areas. Some of them went to urgent care. Some folks just retired completely. So it's not just a Peterborough that's being affected by this, but it is every ambulance service in the state of New Hampshire, in northern Massachusetts, really across the country. There's a staffing shortage. Because we were not able to maintain adequate levels of staffing to run not just the transfer service, but really to effectively staff even our emergency response service, we suspended the transfer service in June of 23. Other challenges that the ambulance service has faced have included declined insurance reimbursements, as well as an increase to the emergency call volume, significant increase to emergency call volume, and also legislative efforts that are creating even more uncertainty in the ambulance world. Recently, there have been legislative efforts to ban balance billing, which is how when an insurance company only pays a portion of the ambulance bill, we're forced to bill the patients. That's called balance billing. Also, if your ambulance service is put to the deductible of an insurance plan, then that means that we have to bill the patient while they meet that deductible. There's also been consideration of bills that would expand the definition of surprise billing to also include ground ambulance service. And there's uncertainty over the effectiveness of a new law that is meant to require insurance companies to pay ambulance services directly. Insurance companies at this time often will send the check to the patient, and they receive a check. They don't know necessarily what it's for. They'll cash it. They'll use it to pay their bills, which is understandable, but that means that they now owe the full amount of the ambulance bill directly themselves. So we've already taken some steps to respond to this uncertainty. First thing we did was suspend the Ambulance Services CIP, which is the program through which we save money for the purchase of ambulances and large equipment. We've suspended that, until fiscal year of 26. The revenue shortfall has been distributed across all the towns that we serve, including Peterborough. We have a formula every year that we use to bill all the towns that we serve, so that we are all paying our fair share. And we also are moving ambulance service expenditures and revenues into the general fund. This will allow us to draw from other parts of the budget if there is a dramatic loss of revenue. We did leave the ambulance CIP in the ambulance revolving fund, but there won't likely be anything to draw on at the end of this year. On this slide, and I hope you're all following along in your handouts because I know you can't possibly read anything on the screen that I've been showing you. But on this side, you can see our total fiscal year 25 proposed budget. So this is everything, including all those special funds that I was speaking about earlier. It shows the gross expenditures. It shows what we anticipate for revenues against all those expenditures. And then the net is the amount that we will need to raise and appropriate through taxation in order to be able to run those services. And then on this next page, I've broken down the general fund budgets and provided some notes on the changes, the dramatic changes. So for instance, the administration department, the revenues for the administration department include all regular state and federal grants. So where you see declines in grants, you'll see a decline most likely in the administration department. There's also a big jump in expenditures in administration. Fair amount of that is due to the increase in welfare budget, which it had to go up in order to meet the demand that was left when the federal COVID-related funds dried up. And a lot of the state and federal grants that were used to support housing for low-income individuals abruptly vanished. Another big increase, again, I mentioned this earlier, but in fiscal year 25's finance expenditures include the new debt service payments for the highway garage and the fire station planning bonds. If you compare the ambulance service FY24 revolving fund budget and the proposed general fund budget, you're really looking not exactly apples and oranges, but you're looking at apples and pears. They're not the same thing at all, but trying to provide as good of a comparison as I can, I put those there for you to review. The significant, in addition to the loss of the revenue from the transfer budget, the significant difference you see there is that we used to have a special warrant article every year that would help provide support to the ambulance service. Last year was $450,000. This year, since we won't be raising and appropriating through an additional warrant article, that raise and appropriate's been rolled into this Article 3. And also in FY24, the Public Works revenue included proceeds from the West Peterborough TIF District fund in order to offset the cost of improvements that were being made there. We're not drawing any funds or any additional funds for projects in the West Peterborough TIF District, so those revenues aren't included in this year's budget, which makes it look like the Public Works budget went up a lot when it really didn't. And that's all that I have for a presentation. I'm happy to take any questions.
Questions for Nicole? Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Charlie from 5 Old Street Road.
Charlie
Huff, sorry about
okay.
that. Charlie Huff from 5 Old Street Road. I understand everything that was just presented, but I'm very disappointed that the comparison versus the last fiscal year was not shown. 14 million to 17 million is a 21% increase. And I find that a little bit offensive. I would like to understand why we need to increase our contributions by 21% when I'm a school bus driver, I get a 4% increase. How does that make any sense? That 21% is going to come down, trickle down to my taxes, which are going to be difficult to stomach? That's my question.
Nicole?
So the bulk of that answer is the ambulance service. So because the ambulance service is now being rolled into the general fund, that's where all that comes into, because we're not just rolling in the ambulance services 100% offsetting revenues, which it doesn't have anymore. We're also rolling in all of his expenditures. So it makes it all go up. We have all of the ambulance services expenditures, which as you can see here, last year was $2.2 million, and this year it's $2.28 million. So, and you can see that in your slides. The revenues, it included a special warrant article, which wasn't included in the previous year's general fund. But that $450,000, is now being raised and appropriated in this general fund article. So it's really, we're not really raising 21% more. The way we're breaking it out is different. It's really the shortest answer I can give. Does that make sense? Answer your question?
Thank you.
Okay.
Other questions or comments for Nicole? Yes, sir.
Good evening, Leo Smith, Summer Street. I was going through the MS 636, which is the state budget, and I was going through it looking for different I guess, stories. And I found a great story in there. There are two revenue line items in the MS 636, which is income from other departments as well as interest on investments. And there are significant increases. I think in the income for departments was up about $1 million compared to the last couple of years average. And then the interest was pretty significant as well. I mean, to me, that's a good story. I mean, it really helps in terms of reducing the overall tax burden. But I was wondering what's creating all that?
For as far as the interest goes,
yes.
It was a lot of negotiation by Lily Gilligan, our finance director, working with M&T Bank. Got our interest rates from, I think it was like 0.001 to 4.25, which is an enormous jump in interest.
Right. Oh, that's great.
Yep. 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 So from $1,200 estimated revenue in the previous year to $660,000 of new interest revenue.
Is that like a one-time thing, or is it sustainable?
It's just, well, as long as the interest rates stay up,
okay.
Yes. You know, as you know, Leo, we have all of our we have everything in a pooled account.
Yes.
So we're maximizing that interest rate as
Excellent.
much as we possibly can.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
That's great.
So.
And then we have the million over the average in the income from other departments.
Yeah, and that's just all over the place. It would be too hard to go through, but happy to break that out for you if you want to see that.
Sure. Yeah, it's a significant increase, and it has a real positive impact on the tax rate.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Other comments or questions?
Bill.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yes. Bill Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Nicole, what % increase in our budget this year?
The exact number was 3.5. 3.1, thank you. 3.1% at the end.
That's not 20%. That's 3.1%.
Yep.
That's excluding the impact of the transfer of the
Sir, do you
ambulance.
just step up? I'm not sure everybody can hear you.
I'm saying 3.1%, I guess you're excluding the impact of the transfer of the ambulance.
It's
service.
netting out that impact along with everything else, including the interest income that we were just talking about and all the
Okay.
other moving parts that are in the budget.
Okay, thank
Yep.
you.
All right. Anyone else? Going once, twice? All right. We'll move the article to the ballot to be voted on May 14th at the polls at the community center. And we'll move on to Article 4. Article 4 is entitled Pay As You Throw Special Revenue Fund, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $120,000 for the purpose of operating and maintaining the town's Pay-As-You-Throw program, with said funds to come from Pay-As-You-Throw Special Revenue Fund and no additional funds to be raised through taxation. Is there a motion under the article?
So moved.
Moved by Bill Kennedy. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Bill Taylor. Bill, do you want to go ahead? Would you like to speak on this?
I think it's self-explanatory. It's a program that we're trying to pay for hauling fees. If you remember or have participated, you'll note that we actually raised the price of the blue bags recently to try to cover some of these expenses that we have. But this is almost a revolving fund. It's supposed to pay for itself.
Questions? Comments? All right, we'll move on to Article 5. We'll put Article 4 on the ballot, as I indicated with Article 3. Article 5 is Police Department Fleet Management Capital Reserve Fund, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $125,000 to be placed in the Police Department Fleet Management Capital Reserve Fund. Is there a motion under Article 5?
So moved.
Moved by Bill Taylor, second.
Second.
By Tyler Ward. So, Bill, would you like to speak on this?
No, this is basically saving money for police department vehicles instead of taking out loans on them.
Questions about that? Chief, anything you need to say on that?
Yes, these are funds, as we move into fiscal year 2025, we're scheduled to replace 2 vehicles that year. One of these vehicles, working with the Energy Committee, the plan is to replace it with an electric vehicle. What that will do is that'll give us a vehicle that would normally be a gas-operated vehicle. We anticipate that instead of replacing that vehicle every 4 years, we'll get 6+ years of life out of the electric vehicle. That's at about a $70,000 expense for that vehicle. The other vehicle to be replaced will be one of the black and white vehicles, which is a fully equipped police cruiser. The idea behind the funding here is to build the account up where it stays relatively level over the years ahead.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I just have a question. Loretta Laurinaitis. I'm from Four Winds Farm Road. I have a question about how much is in the account currently.
Well, step up. Maybe that the moderator has a hard time here.
$33,765.
I'm sorry, could you repeat?
$33,765.
Thank you.
And just for anyone who's interested in any of these capital reserve accounts or expendable trust accounts, we have the whole CIP posted up on the website, so you can go through and see all the details. I think we have it built out for 10 years? Not quite, 6 years. 6 years on the website.
Other questions about Article 5? Comments, questions? All right, well, thank you. We'll move that to the ballot voting on May 14th as well. Move on to Article 6, Fire Department Apparatus and Equipment Capital Reserve Fund, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $210,000 to be placed in the Fire Department Apparatus and Equipment Capital Reserve Fund. Is there a motion under Article 6?
So moved.
So moved by Tyler Ward, second.
Second.
Second by Bill Kennedy. Tyler, anything there?
Sure. Similar to the previous article, it's Capital Reserve Fund looking to allocate funds into this account to pay. Chief Walker, would you like to maybe articulate upcoming expenditures?
So much like the Police Department Capital Reserve Fund and the other capital reserve funds, one of the main goals of this is to spread out and to, I should say, even out the spending. Fire apparatus now, an engine is going for close to $800,000 to $900,000. A ladder truck, which you're looking to replace in fiscal year 2030, will be estimated around $1.2 or $1.3 million. So again, the goal here with this is to get us in a position as a community where we can afford these with money that we've just saved as opposed to taking bonds out for them. For example, the $1.1 or $1.2 million bond for a ladder truck in 2030.
And just for everyone's benefit, do you know how much is currently in the fund?
No,
Just
but
so
I know someone who does.
Well, right, but I think there's some interest in that.
So currently the Fire Department Capital Reserve Fund has $141,799. And I think one thing that's important for our fund is vehicles and equipment. If you remember, a lot of our equipment also is very expensive, whether it's portable radios, SCBA, and things like that. So this doesn't include just vehicles. It also includes a lot of the equipment that goes on those vehicles.
Thank you, Chief. Questions, comments? Yes, ma'am.
Loretta Laurinaitis again. I just wondered how the capital reserve funds for each of these departments, like the police department, the fire department, are they put in separate funds that then draw interest that goes into those capital reserve funds individually?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. We all set on that one? All right, we'll move on to Article 7, Public Works Fleet Management Capital Reserve Fund, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $500,000 to be placed in the Public Works Fleet Management Capital Reserve Fund. Is there a motion under Article 7?
So moved.
Moved by Bill Kennedy. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Bill Taylor. Anything that you'd like to say on this one, Bill?
I think we had enough discussion about capital reserve funds. Seth, if you have something to add, I want to also mention that this is the most prudent financial strategy that we should have in town. The last thing we want to be doing is paying a lot of interest to banks.
Seth?
There's $371,000 in the account. Similar, I can't add more than, thank you, sorry, very close anyway, but the chiefs have already kind of given you the overview of how we save and how we forecast, and this of course is for the Public Works Department, and we're mostly talking about plow trucks. So we actually have about that amount in the account, but we've already spent it. But as everyone knows, it takes forever to get things these days, so we're waiting for the delivery of some vehicles at this point that are previously ordered. So this helps us to keep our footing strong financially as we continue to replace vehicles. There's a couple that we are looking to replace. This will help to capitalize the replacement of a 25-year-old plow truck that we have long since outlasted the useful life of, thanks to the good work of our staff and our mechanics that work for the town. So this is next year would be a six-wheeler replacement, and then 2 Ford F-350s. And you live in town, so one of those probably goes by your house.
All right. Questions or comments for Seth or about this article in general? All right, thank you. We'll move this one to the ballot voting on May 14th as well, and move on to Article 8, Roadway Systems Upgrades Capital Reserve Fund, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $400,000, $53,434 to come from the proceeds of a special one-time highway payment in accordance with House Bill 2, and $346,566 to be raised through taxation to be placed in the Roadway Systems Upgrades Capital Reserve Fund. Is there a motion under Article 8?
So moved.
Moved by Bill Taylor, second.
I will second that motion.
All right, second by Tyler Ward. Any comments from the Select Board about that one?
Well, I know Seth loves to talk about this, so we'll let him talk briefly about it. And if there's any questions that are specific to your own road, it gets moved to the bottom of the list to be repaved.
Anticipating Bill's comments, I've reduced my presentation to one slide. But I will give you a little bit of an overview. I've been talking about this now for 8 years, and we've been funding this. This will be the 7th year of the program if funded in May. But essentially, dating back to when we were looking at this, we were hearing a lot of comments from the community about how the roadway network was in pretty bad disrepair, and which prompted obviously the need to put together a decent financial strategy so that we could continue to, or so we could start to make progress on our road network. Excuse me. I'll give a couple more comments. Our operating budget supports $450,000 per year, which allows our highway department the funding they need to deal with maintenance of roads that are in good shape, which includes drainage and anything else related to the roads. What this is, and what you voted on the last few years, is additional monies that would allow us to invest in more expensive paving projects. Over that period, we've paved 41 roads with this program, and we've erased the town's, I know it's very small, but we've essentially taken the town's overall roadway network rating from a 70.45 to an 81.57. So if you think of roads on a sliding scale of 0 being an impassable road to 100 a road that was paved yesterday, you can think about it in that sense. So we've actually added a lot of value to the roadway network, and what this has done is enabled us to invest what monies we have in our operating budget to keep our good roads in good shape. We are planning for, as many of you know, if you live in the rural sections of town, we've probably already been by your road if it was in bad shape. We've been moving inward, and that was strategic to allow the Main Street Bridge project to be completed prior to more disruptions of traffic downtown. And we have 2 bridge projects that you'll hear another warrant article in a moment, refurbishing projects that also need to take place hopefully this coming year. And when those are done, we'll be moving into the downtown. This coming year, we're planning on paving Pine Street. That's going to be a big, expensive project. It's been long overdue. It's one of the worst roads in town, but it's also one of the most expensive roads given the amount of utilities and other infrastructure connected to that roadway. Right now, we have, so we've spent $1.6 million since we started this program, but we've also, through these warrant articles, saved approximately $785,000, which we will use to support Pine Street this coming year and the downtown as we finish up some other projects.
All right. Does anyone dare risking asking about their own road here? Yes? Yes, sir.
Yeah, Carl Brunswick, Concord Street. Just curious when this road will be taken care of. When's that scheduled for?
Grove Street?
Yeah, Grove Street. I bunny hop on my bike, depending on traffic. It's pretty bad.
Yeah, the downtown is in rough shape, but we've strategically waited to address the downtown until the Main Street Bridge project was done, and then we're hoping to do both the Elm Street Bridge and the Grove Street Bridge this coming fiscal year. Those are not replacement, those are refurbishing projects. I'm jumping ahead, you're going to see that in another article, but when those projects are complete, we're moving into the downtown the year after. So FY26 is the current plan. We're talking about FY25 tonight, okay, so that'd be the construction season starting July.
So you waited until I'm retired and not commuting anymore. Okay.
Trying to do things in a strategic way.
Thank you.
All right. Other questions, comments? All right. Article 9. We'll move Article 8 to the ballot. Take up Article 9. Under Article 9, it's been warned. This one's called the Recreation Department Equipment Capital Reserve Fund, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $15,000 to be placed in the Recreation Department Equipment Capital Reserve Fund. Is there a motion under Article 9?
So moved.
Moved by Tyler Ward. Second?
Second.
Second by Bill Kennedy. Tyler, anything you'd like to add there?
A relatively small amount of money to get into this fund. Lisa, do you want to elaborate on any projects that might be coming up? Lisa Kozel-Betts, our Recreation Department head.
Yes.
Hi there. We have nothing going on for FY25.
Just
a little closer.
Move that up a little. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
We don't have any capital improvements going on for this upcoming year, but we will after that. We're always replacing mowers and the trucks and the vans. We're going...
They can't hear back there, if you would.
We're possibly going to a new van, instead replacing the 2 vans that we have existing. Go to other vehicles that would be more conducive to serving the Peterborough public, something that has wheelchair access. So that's coming up in the future. But for right now, that's a placeholder to keep the fund growing so we have the money to move forward.
All right. Questions, comments? All set? All right. We'll move Article 9 then to the ballot and take up Article 10, the Adams Pool Improvement Capital Reserve Fund, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $20,000 to be placed in the Adams Pool Improvement Capital Reserve Fund. Is there a motion under Article 10?
So moved.
Moved by Bill Kennedy, second.
Second.
Second by Bill Taylor. Bill, anything that you'd like to add about that one?
I'll only say if anyone has ever owned a pool themselves, they'll understand what a money pit they can become. But we've done a great job of maintaining Adams Playground Pool, and I think we need to continue to do so. Lisa, would you like to make any more comment? No.
Okay. Any questions? All right, we'll move that one to the ballot as well. Move on to Article 11, the GIS Capital Reserve Fund, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $18,500 to be placed in the GIS Capital Reserve Fund. Is there a motion under Article 11?
So moved.
Moved by Bill Taylor, second.
Second.
By Tyler Ward. All right, Bill?
I mean, is this going to be Fosh's only chance to speak tonight? Thanks, Fosh.
Hi. This reserve fund's been around since about 2006. It goes towards funding a flight of the town where we take photos that are used in our parcel mapping applications and other town departments. It will also create 1-foot topo, which will be used in public works engineering projects and also our floodplain assessment stuff. Every year, 18.5 will go in. This year, we're actually expending and doing a flight where we capture high-resolution photos, create the topo. We do them about every 7 years on average. So.
All right. Questions, comments? All right, thanks very much. We will move that one to the official ballot for voting on May 14th as well. Move on to Article 12, Bridges, Culverts, and Dams Capital Reserve Fund, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $500,000, $65,790 to come from the proceeds of a special one-time bridge payment in accordance with House Bill 2, and $434,210 to be raised through taxation to be placed in the Bridges, Culverts, and Dams Capital Reserve Fund. Is there a motion under Article 12?
So moved.
All right, moved by Tyler Ward, second.
I will second.
Second by Bill Kennedy. All right, who would like to speak on that one?
Sure. Seth alluded to a couple of bridges that are coming up, and then we also have some culverts and some dams that may need attention. So that's where this money is being captured to for a later date.
All right, I have a note. Go ahead. Yes, ma'am.
I just wondered why this is being changed from capital improvement fund to an expendable trust.
Well, we haven't done anything about that yet.
Okay.
So, I was about to ask whether there might be an amendment offered under this article.
Okay.
So we'll see.
Okay, may I ask one question before that?
Sure.
Does this fund also include money from the TIFs? Because I know that the TIFs have bridges as something that they use their TIF funds for. And I'm just wondering how you separate out what the TIF districts from this. I'm assuming this is for bridges that are not covered by the TIFs.
That's absolutely correct. So the intent of this fund, and the reason why an amendment is about to be offered is because last year when we established this fund, we established it as an expendable trust fund. But when I was drafting up the warrant for the selectmen, I put in capital reserve fund because I put in capital reserve fund. And it's an error that needs to be corrected to make sure that the money is directed to the correct fund. But the reason why this was established was to help with the orderly replacement of any bridges and culverts that are not within a TIF district or a TIF district plan. These are funds that could hypothetically be spent within a TIF district, but it makes logical sense to use them only for those areas of town, and we have plenty of them, where there are bridges and culverts that need to be replaced that don't have the opportunity to be funded through a TIF program.
All right. Am I correct that there is a motion to be made then to change the title of this fund?
So moved.
All right. Well, what we're talking about, is simply changing the title of this article and of the fund that the funds would go into. There's no change being moved in any of the amounts that I previously read, but I'm going to read the text of the amendment again, just so we're clear what we're considering at this point. It was moved by, who was that? Bill Kennedy? Huh?
Yeah.
Yes. And
I'll second it.
Second,
Sure.
This is the amendment that's being offered under Article 12. It's called Bridges, Culverts, and Dams Expendable Trust Fund. And the proposed amendment is to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $500,000, $65,790 to come from the proceeds of a special one-time bridge payment in accordance with House Bill 2, and $434,210 to be raised through taxation to be placed in the Bridges, Culverts, and Dams Expendable Trust Fund. All right. Nicole, do you want to just, again, highlight this is a change in the title of the fund?
Just in the title in the article. So the fund itself was established last year by town meeting as an expendable trust fund. Expendable trust funds and capital reserve funds are functionally exactly the same. They are enabled by two different pieces of state law. But other than that, they really are no different. And so simply just correcting the title of this of the fund in this article so that it goes to the right place without any hitch.
All right, comments, questions on the proposed amendment? That's what we're currently considering. All right, we do need to vote on this proposed amendment. So all those in favor of the amendment that's been proposed to change the title of the amendment from the Capital Reserve Fund to the Expendable Trust Fund, same amounts involved in both, please raise your hands. All right, thank you. If you're opposed to the amendment, raise your hand. It looks as though the amendment has carried unanimously, so we will go forward on the amended motion. Are there any comments or questions on the amended motion before we proceed to the next article? I don't see any, so we will move the amended Article 12 to the ballot voting on May 14th, and we'll move on to Article 13. Establish West Peterborough District Expendable Trust Fund. To see if the town will vote to establish the West Peterborough District Expendable Trust Fund for the purpose of improving and maintaining physical infrastructure in accordance with the West Peterborough Tax Increment Finance Plan adopted by town meeting in 2004 and revised by town meeting in 2008, Board of Selectmen agents to expend, and further to raise and appropriate the sum of $1,417,389 from the West Peterborough Tax Increment Finance District escrow account, no additional funds to be raised through taxation. Is there a motion under Article 13?
So moved.
Moved by Bill Kennedy. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Bill Taylor. So, Bill Kennedy, would you like to explain this one a little bit, or maybe?
I think the explanations in the warrant, in the article. I could mention that all of those funds are going to come out of the trust into the trust fund, and that the West Peterborough TIF is actually sunsetting this year. or next year, at the end of this year. So we needed some place to park the money for one thing, so that the monies are now available for the future maintenance of the West Peterborough TIF. Do you want to add anything, Nicole?
So that's one of the biggest reasons. So I'm more or less going to speak to all three articles of these next three articles at the same time, because they're all seeking to do the same thing, just one for each of the different TIF districts. So what Bill mentioned is absolutely the primary motivating factor. We have over $600,000 sitting in the West Peterborough TIF escrow account. That fund can only be used within the TIF district, the West Peterborough TIF district, to work on TIF improvements, to maintain them, repair them if necessary. So we would like to continue to do that with these funds. So we would like to be able to move them out of the escrow accounts before the district sunsets, and be able to save them in expendable trust funds, so that every year, as road needs to be repaired, as perhaps one of our culverts out there needs to be replaced, we'll be able to draw on these funds to do that. And presumably, when they're handed over to the trustees of the trust funds, they'll be carefully invested and will continue to earn income to continue to fund all of those repairs and maintenance work well into the future. Another reason to do this, and if you remember back to when I was talking about Article 3, and particularly the Public Works budget, there was a big spike in revenue this current fiscal year 24, and there's going to be a big drop-off in revenue in fiscal year 25, which makes it's an artificial inflation of the Public Works revenue budget and artificial deflation in the Public Works revenue budget, all because TIF funds were used on a project. By being able to put them into an expendable trust fund and have the selectmen draw on that, those revenues won't have to be included in the operating budget every year. So what you're going to see instead is, when you look at the Public Works operating budget, you're just going to see the cost of operating Public Works. You're not going to see a special project in a TIF district spike the budget revenues and then drop them again. So it makes for a much clearer, more transparent budget when you're looking at it. And is everyone comfortable with TIF districts? Because I can also talk about them a little bit if you need me to. No? Okay.
Okay. So moving funds from one place to another, but not increasing the amounts. Correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So we're not asking for any more dollars. These dollars have already been raised through regular TIF district taxation and captured.
Yes, ma'am.
Loretta Laurinaitis again. I still don't understand what the difference is between the expendable trust fund and a capital reserve fund. Why choose an expendable trust fund, and how does it get managed by the select board in making decisions about what the funds are used for? And is the budget committee involved in any of that?
Okay, those are really good questions. So the difference between a capital reserve fund and an expendable trust fund is functionally there is no difference between them. They're savings accounts that were established by state law that towns are able to use to save up. If I were to hazard a guess, and this is truly just a guess on my part, the legislature first established capital reserve funds to allow towns to save up for big capital improvements and replacements. But then it was found that that was perhaps a little restrictive, and so expendable trust funds were enabled at a later date. But again, I'm just guessing. So expendable trust funds are a bit more open-ended. Town can set them up for any number of reasons. They can only be used for the reasons that they were established for. So for instance, here we're looking at establishing a West Peterborough TIF district expendable trust fund that is going to be only used for things that were in the plan that was adopted by town meeting. This town meeting occurred in 2004. The plan was revised in 2008. So that's exactly what those funds can be used for. They can never be used for anything else. The selectmen don't manage the fund. The funds are managed by the trustees of the trust fund, and those are elected officials. They meet quarterly in public meetings to review all the trusts that the town holds. They are also, the Peterborough's trustees of the trust funds also oversee the Conval School District's trust funds. And so it's not just capital reserve funds and expendable trust funds, but also any bequests that have been made over the last 150 or so years. They oversee the investment of all of those. A lot of those funds, for instance, recently were used to make improvements to the library. Other funds that they manage are used to maintain the cemeteries. So they oversee a lot of that. When the selectmen want to make an expenditure out of an expendable trust fund or a capital reserve fund, they have to submit, and the staff does this on behalf of the select board, submit the record of the vote to the trustees of the trust fund so they can see that the selectmen voted for this use. They have to submit evidence of what the money is going to pay for, and that, to ensure that it is within the established use of that fund, and then respond to any other questions that they might have. Sometimes they'll need to see exactly the enabling language out of whatever warrant article or things like that, so we provide that to them. They review all of that before they issue the check back to the town.
Oh, thank you.
They're very carefully looked after.
I also wonder, though, why the money, once the West Peterborough District sunsets, my understanding was once the TIF district ends, that those funds don't stay with the TIF district. Why don't they go back to the general fund?
So it's actually, this is something that we've been working on with New Hampshire's Department of Revenue Administration for a long time. One of the things that we encountered fairly early on after finding out that West Peterborough TIF district in particular was going to be very successful and was likely to have a lot of funds left over at the end was, what do we do with this money once this district sunsets? And this is something we started talking about 5 or 6 years ago. And the Department of Revenue Administration really didn't have a particularly good answer because the funds are being raised out of taxation that is above what is being captured for not just the town, but also the school district, the county, and the state. Well, you can't very well go back in time, take all that money and say, okay, well, this amount would have gone to the school and this amount would have gone to the county, because all of those different ways that that money is collected has changed dramatically. So there's no good solution there. So we can't just return all of it to the general fund. We needed to be able to continue to use it. We wanted to use it for the purpose that it was raised for. So this was the simplest solution that we were able to all come up with. Makes the most sense. You continue to hold on to the money, control it through an expendable trust fund to make sure that it's only going to the purpose that it was originally raised for and no other purpose. And that satisfied the state, it satisfied our town attorney, it satisfies pretty much everyone who's had a look at it.
I guess one thing you said raises another question for me, and that's you said that the money couldn't be distributed back to the town or the school or, I guess, the county. Mm-hmm. My understanding was that we were always told that the TIF districts don't impact the school and the county. So where does that come in?
Okay. This is where I'm going to bring up my slides for TIF districts, so bear with me a second while I find those.
While she accomplished that, I might also add that every TIF district has an advisory committee composed of people in the district, and it was on their advice that we would go in this direction rather than returning it to the general fund.
Not returning it to the general fund, is that what you said?
Yes, establishing these expendable trusts in lieu of returning the money to the general fund and the complications that are involved with that.
Okay, so this is as simple as I can make this, because the figuring out how taxes are calculated involves an awful lot of calculations that have to be done every year. Okay. Thank you. All right, so every year it's a very complicated set of formulas that are that are gone through to determine, and they're not just, the town doesn't just do this. These are formulas that are set by the state, formulas that are set by the school district. Funding formula, for instance, is one of them, that determine how the different tax rates are calculated. So each of these different governmental budgets has a different formula to set their portion of the tax rate. And so those, and then those entities have their own budgets every year. So they have the amount that needs to be raised and appropriated through taxation. That amount is put through all those formulas. It determines how much each town has to contribute, whether to its own budget, to the school district's budget, to the county budget, or the state budget, depending on where they sit in that formula. Then that amount is then divided by the total valuation of all town property, right? And that's what gets you your tax rate at the end. So, and then we take all that, you figure out what a property tax bill is by multiplying the tax rate by every $1,000 of property value. So for instance, in 2023, if you had a $300,000 home, you would have multiplied 300 by $28.19, and that would have gotten you your $8,457 tax bill. Relatively straightforward. So TIF district works by, you take those same budgets, you go through that whole process, but you're doing that on a valuation of the town that includes all the value of the property before the TIF district was established. So as it was currently valued, as it currently existed before the TIF district was established. Then when you're establishing a TIF district, the assessors are going to go through that district and they're going to create that year zero value. That's going to continue, that year zero value is going to continue to go towards regular government funding. So for instance, in West Peterborough, my house is in the West Peterborough TIF district, but there's never been any improvements to my house. So 100% of the value of my home is being taxed and goes through the same purposes as any home outside of the TIF district, okay? And then incremental value that gets increased within the TIF district. So, let's say, for instance, I put an addition on my house. Well, the incremental value of that addition would then, be taxed just like every other property in town is at the same tax rate as every other property in town. But that tax dollar would, instead of going to the town, the county, the school, the state, would sit in that TIF district. And it would be used to fund all the improvements that are within the TIF district's plan. So that's essentially how TIF districts work, and that's how they raise their money. So, again, if we use that same $300,000 existing home that when the TIF district was created, you have that same $8,457 tax bill in 2023. But then you put a $50,000 addition onto that home. That $50,000 worth of value would generate $1,409 in taxes last year. That incremental taxation is what goes into the TIF district's account. Now, West Peterborough TIF district has existed since 2004. So it's been collecting incremental taxation every year since 2004. We have done millions and millions of dollars worth of improvements since then, with the money that's been raised. The last set of improvements was done just this past year, right? So, and every year since 2004, every one of these entities, the town, the county, the state, the school district, has had different budgets, and they've run them through all of those formulas, and they have figured out which town owes what to go in, to pay for them. And that hasn't included the value that's been captured by the TIF district. So to be able to figure out how much money would have to go to each of those entities, you would somehow have to figure out, first off, how many dollars were left over from each year that the TIF was existing and was collecting money that wasn't used within the TIF district, and then rerun all of those different formulas and calculations to figure out how many dollars would go to all those different governmental entities out of that particular year's worth of TIF funds, and you'd have to do it for every single year since 2004. And that's where we in the DRA got hung up, because it was impossible to figure out what dollar came from which year, What dollar was used for, in projects? What dollar could go back to, could go back to a town, or could go back to the state, or could go back to the county or the school district? So it made the most sense to everybody to just create these expendable trust funds to continue using those dollars for exactly the purpose that they were captured for in the first place.
Okay, I understand that. Okay. I guess what I don't understand is what's used for the total valuation of the town to set the tax rate.
It depends on which part of the tax rate you're talking about, because each of these formulas uses a different type of way of valuing the town. It's okay. Truly complicated and almost impossible for me to explain without sitting you down in my office and spending at least 45 minutes going through all the different forms.
Well, that might be something I want to do at some point, but not right now. Yep. But I do have a related question, and that has to do with the fact that the money for the fund is listed as $1,417,389. But when I looked at the EDA minutes, and this was from January of 2024, because those were the only ones that were available for 2024. And they said the balance was $750,000 at that point. So I was kind of trying to figure out why there's this big discrepancy. And each of the other ones is different, too, from what they had listed in January. So is it that more money was collected? Was there an error the first time around? Do you know?
Yeah. I'm not sure exactly what they were calculating on. If I were to hazard a guess, they may have been calculated before taxation from the fall. I don't know I'm not sure where that calculation comes from.
Okay, but the accurate ones are the ones that are listed.
The actual amount that's sitting in the escrow accounts as of March, the first week of March, which is when we drafted up this warrant, is that dollar amount that you see on each of those articles.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Yes, sir.
Excuse me. I have a question about the interest earned on these TIF accounts. I would assume that they stay with the TIF, but is it possible to get it back to the town? Because this is possibly a significant amount of money, given the interest rates today, or the type of investment that it's in.
Yeah, Lily, that is definitely a finance director question.
Mm-hmm.
This money is currently not being captured by the general fund. This is money set aside in escrow accounts for these TIFs, and the 4.25% interest rate that I negotiated with the bank is benefiting all of the accounts in our possession. So the 4.25% that the general fund is benefiting from right now is also benefiting each of these 3 individual escrow accounts for the TIFs, as well as the Conservation Commission money, the cemetery money, all of them. Okay?
All right. Other questions, comments? Yes, sir.
Leo Smith. It's a real easy question. Considering that assessments are a big part of determining TIF values and also the amount of money that the TIFs raise, where is the town in terms of its 5-year cycle in terms of reval?
Great question. We're actually getting ready to do a reval this coming fiscal year. So you're going to start seeing a lot of material coming out of Allie's office. Allie Kreutz is our assessing clerk. She's going to be at First Friday. So you can go and talk to her directly. Are you guys setting up right outside on the portico? So they'll be right outside here with a table. Allie's going to be there to answer all the questions about revaluation. But yes, we are going to be doing a revaluation this year. Currently, our equalized value is at about 74%. So we're way below market value. Right. Fortunately, that is across the board, but nonetheless, we really do need to bring that all up. Sure. What's that? Yeah, no. So that's all I'm going to say about that. But please, by all means, address your questions to Allie and anyone who owns property in town. recommend that they reach out to Ally as well if they have any questions.
Yeah, and that should be a plus for the TIF revenues.
Absolutely.
Going forward. So, thanks.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Bill Kennedy?
I just want to remind everyone that when the West Peterborough TIF sunsets, whatever taxes are collected after that will all go into the general fund. There will be no more funds going into the TIF account.
All right. We all set? Everybody clear? We'll move Article 13 then to the ballot vote on May 14th. We'll move on to Article 14, a similar item, establish Greater Downtown District Expendable Trust Fund, to see if the town will vote to establish the Greater Downtown District Expendable Trust Fund for the purpose of improving and maintaining physical infrastructure in accordance with the Greater Downtown Tax Increment Finance Plan adopted by town meeting in 2012 and revised by town meeting in 2015. Board of Selectmen agents to expend, and further to raise and appropriate the sum of $695,200 from the Greater Downtown Tax Increment Finance District escrow account. No additional funds to be raised through taxation. Is there a motion under Article 14?
So moved.
Moved by Bill Taylor. Second?
Second.
Second by Tyler Ward. Okay. So, any further discussion on this? I think we have...
I think we covered it.
Pardon me?
I think we covered it.
Well, I don't know. Have we covered it? All right. Well, thank you. We'll move on to Article 15. Establish South Peterborough District Expendable Trust Fund, to see if the town will vote to establish the South Peterborough District Expendable Trust Fund for the purpose of improving and maintaining physical infrastructure in accordance with the South Peterborough Tax Increment Finance Plan adopted by town meeting in 2015, Board of Selectmen agents to expend, and further to raise and appropriate the sum of $2,644,428 from the South Peterborough Tax Increment Finance District escrow account, no additional funds to be raised through taxation. Is there a motion under Article 15?
So moved.
Moved by Tyler Ward. A second?
Second.
Second by Bill Kennedy. So, again, any further questions there about that particular article? All right. Not seeing any, we'll move Article 15 also to the ballot and go to Article 16. This is a petition article to revise the code book of the Town of Peterborough, Chapter 59, Animal Control, to see if the town will vote to revise Chapter 59 of the Town Code Book concerning animal control by adding Section 59-8 concerning livestock. All livestock and domestic fowl shall be kept within a fence or other form of secure enclosure that will prevent them from walking, jumping, or flying out. An owner or keeper shall not allow any domestic animal, including poultry, to run free or roam at large so as to trespass on private property or become a nuisance or hazard on public or private property, and to revise Section 59-7, violations and penalties, by adding the following. It shall be the duty of any law enforcement officer, animal control officer, or health officer to issue a complaint against the owner or keeper of livestock and domestic fowl for a violation of any provision of this chapter. The penalty for violation of this chapter shall be $25 for the first offense, $100 for the second offense, and court appearance for the third offense. Again, this is by petition. Is there a motion under Article 16? We need a motion in order to be able to consider it. No? Don't see anyone raising their hand to submit a motion here. It was petitioned, but if there's no motion, we will not act upon it.
Can we amend it if it doesn't get
Pardon me?
Can we amend it if it doesn't get moved?
No, we can't amend a motion that we don't have a motion for. So if there's no, yes. All right. Your name, sir? Peter what? All right. Is there a second? Pardon me? All right. So would anyone like to speak on this article? Yes. Leslie?
Chief, could you speak to what happens right now when livestock such as chicken trespasses?
Right now the chickens are arrested.
Currently, as animal control, we are the animal control officers, the police department. So given a hypothetical, if you were to call about the neighbor's chickens wandering into your yard, unless the chickens are causing damage to your property or crop, there's really nothing that we can do. There's a state law that covers it, and it's entitled Trespassing Stock. Should livestock or fowl come onto your property and do damage, that's covered under state law.
And how do you identify whether these chickens belong to a particular homeowner?
That can be a challenge. Typically, the neighbor, the caller, will say, will know whose chickens they are, at which point we then engage with conversation with the owner of the animals.
And would you advocate for jailing someone or calling a court case on their chickens?
No.
These are violation level offenses. Violation level offenses do not carry with them a potential for a jail sentence.
Right. They're typically fined.
Court
much like a parking ticket. Think of it that way.
So would you have to show up if someone had to have a court appearance for their chicken trespass?
The prosecutor would have to prosecute the case if it were to go to the court. We'll call the victim, so to speak, the caller, would also have to appear, as well as the officer who handled the case. Does that answer all of your questions?
All right. I think I saw another hand over there. Was there anyone else? Yes.
Yes. Are other animals considered livestock that are not specifically mentioned here?
Yes. Goats, pigs, rabbits.
But not cats and dogs?
Cats would be covered under this. Dogs are covered under a separate state law.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All set, Chief? Yeah, there's
Apparently
a
not.
question.
I just have a question for the chief.
Yes, ma'am.
Would you stand up, ma'am, please, just so we can all hear you? Yep.
Loretta Laurinaitis. I just have a question about how much this has been an issue or a problem in this town.
Well, it's hard to say. We get calls from time to time.
But it's not like an ongoing...
It's not a daily occurrence.
Okay, thanks.
Yes?
So what are the laws or statutes? Like if some animal is harassing, say, my sheep, am I allowed to shoot him?
No, you are not.
You can't shoot the owner either. All right. Yes. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Rick Lasser. Chief, do you have a strong feeling on this? Is this an improvement to where we're at, or is this negative?
The way I read the petition article, it would put a mechanism in place where if chickens were wandering into your yard, not doing property damage, but you wanted us to remove them and hold the owner accountable, it would create a mechanism for doing just that.
Yes.
I think you people are having fun with me. Just saying.
Yes, no. Mandy Sliver, I appreciate that it would create a mechanism. Do you also think it would create an increased workload for the police department, which could negatively impact our budget down the road or any along those lines?
It would certainly increase workload to some degree. An officer having to testify in court on a matter like this, more time that the prosecutor would have to spend. As far as impacting the budget, I don't see it impacting the budget.
All right, Bill Kennedy.
Mr. Moderator, when I first read this petition article, I was reminded of my situation in which my neighbors had chickens. And they spent, I think, more of their time in my yard than they did in the owner's yard, which was fine with me because they were eating the bugs, the ticks, you name it. And in this particular reading of this petition article, that would be a violation, right?
That is correct.
So, and then there's my second point, which I disagree with totally. My second point is that there is a state law that covers the instance of this, the circumstances of this. It's state law, what is it, RSA 635.
Correct.
So it's already covered, and yet they're restating it in this article. So, Mr. Moderator, I'd like to amend the article with a statement.
All right, you have a motion to amend the article.
I have I move to amend.
Okay, would you hand me the motion? All right, there's been a proposed amendment of Article 16 submitted by Bill Kennedy here to see if the town will vote to revise Chapter 59 of the Town Code Book concerning animal control by adding Section 59-8, trespassing livestock or domestic fowl shall be dealt with as described in New Hampshire RSA, that's our statutory provision, 635:3, and by adding Section 59-9, the penalty for violation may be a warning for the first offense, $100 for the second offense, and court appearance for the third offense. So, is there a second to that motion?
I can't believe I'm saying this, but second.
All right, so Bill, would you like to speak to the proposed amendment?
Well, I felt that, first of all, we need to streamline it to make it more readable and to conform with state law. And the second piece, of it is that there are no penalties attached to the state law, and this allows for those penalties.
All right, Chief, anything you want to add here about the proposed amendment?
No.
No?
No, sir.
Any comments about the proposed amendment before we do vote on whether or not to adopt this amendment? Yes.
Francie von Mertens. I was wondering, is there a problem with it as it unamended? Is there a problem that we need to solve here? Because it seems like there are penalties. It's hard to read the fine print. I thought we'd just take a vote on the original one and vote it down and go home.
We're not going to vote on the original motion.
I understand we have it, but is there a problem here that needs a solution? I just don't know how to vote on the amendment to the amendment, or to Bill's amendment.
All right, does anyone want to address that issue?
I do.
Yes.
Francie, the penalties are prescribed in both of the petitions, in both the petition and the amendment, but not in the state law. And I felt that the wording of the amendment, the original amendment, was too harsh and strict to be implemented.
Chief, something further?
Yeah, just to add on what Mr. Kennedy had stated, it removed the word shall, it put the word may in, which gives us some discretion so that we're not mandated to fine people automatically. Should, a child forget to close the chicken coop door as an example. Okay?
All right, I think there's a question for you, Bill, because you moved this amendment. Are you willing to accept that change from shall to may?
I believe it's already in the amendment. Thank you, Chief. I forgot that little point.
Yeah, the original amendment included may, not shall. So the
No.
the original motion.
The original petition used the word shall.
Okay.
The amendment
says may.
May, which gives us discretion.
So that's the one. That's the one we're currently considering.
Correct.
The proposed amendment.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yes.
Jonah Wheeler from Overseers Row. A little too tall for this. I have a question about just the structure of this. So the original article is the language that's not struck out, and the amendment that you proposed, Bill, is in red. That's true? Okay. So are we voting on the original language at all today, or just
No.
the amendment?
We're now only considering the proposed amendment.
Okay.
If the proposed amendment passes, the motion, the article that was originally read will be amended in that fashion and will go to the ballot on May 14th. If the proposed amendment doesn't pass, the original motion will go to the ballot on May 14th.
Okay. Can I speak against the amendment really quickly?
Go ahead.
Well, I just, with all due respect to Bill, I personally think that this revision and amendment should be voted down. I think this is work that should be tailored from the RSA 635:3, and I think it might make Chief Kennard's job. I don't think you want to be dealing with these animal calls more than you already are, and I think these are personal disputes that should be handled between neighbors, not necessarily something that should have a punitive mechanism to it. So that's all I'd have to say.
All right.
And I guess on a personal note, I might take personal offense to you guys stealing my job. I'm the one on the Criminal Justice Committee that writes these RSAs, so, but kind of a joke anyway.
All right. Any other comments on the proposed amendment?
Jean Deach, Pine Street. I feel like we're getting confused here, or at least I'm confused. So, did we have the option of voting down this petition article?
No, we don't have the option. Okay. That's going to go to the ballot, either originally stated or as amended by this proposal.
Okay, thank you. So in that case, the article as it's originally written requires Chief to make an active effort to investigate these even without someone calling him, which seems quite absurd. So I think that the amendment, the purpose of jumping back to the RSA is that the RSA says someone has to call him and then he investigates, whereas this other language said that he's just supposed to go out and investigate these incidents, which doesn't seem reasonable. So that's why I go back to the RSA, and then the penalty statement is a little bit different, but that was the purpose of the amendment, I think.
All right, yes, Mr. Wheeler?
Understanding that, I thought we could vote down the amendment and then vote down the article, but understanding that, I support the amendment in its form to make it better for the ballot, absolutely. So.
All right, Tyler Ward.
In all of this, will we ever truly find out if it was the chicken's intent to cross the road to trespass?
Yeah, Bill.
I would just like to add,
I hope you got that down, Linda. All right. Any other comments or questions? Jokes? Puns? All right. So are you ready to vote on the proposed amendment? Would you like me to read it again? No, it's been seconded. Yes, it's been moved and seconded. If you're in favor of the proposed amendment of the original article, raise your hand. All right. If you're against the proposed amendment, raise your hand. Again, it looks as though this is a unanimous vote in favor of the proposed amendment. So, as amended, this article will be placed on the ballot for voting on May 14th. All right, well, I think we've done it, ladies and gentlemen. Just as a reminder, all of those articles that we discussed here tonight, and as amended in a couple of cases, are going to the ballot session on May 14th, voting from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. at the Community Center on Elm Street. And then, depending on the outcome of the voting, we'll be back here at 7 p.m. on May 15th for the open session. The open session will involve the budget, if it does not pass at the ballot voting, plus the fire station bond issue question. If the ballot voting passes the budget, the only article that will be considered at the May 15th open session will be the fire station bond issue question. Are we clear about that? Okay, well, thank you all for being here tonight. You deserve special commendation, and we'll see you on May 14th. Thank you.
Thank you.